When we hear a story like the one that Dr. Mark Hicks just told, that centers on the power of community, coming together with shared values, and using art and music and beauty and honoring the ancestors, you see how we can begin to bear memories that are almost unbearable. I'm in awe of that story of what those people, those pilgrims from All Souls Church in Washington, D.C., did together. Something that they could have each done separately, but something that holding that memory together made the unbearable able to be faced. For those of us who have grown up with the privilege of white skin, we haven't really had that kind of community to bear our own unbearable histories. In our cases, the histories were not of being tortured and sold as if we weren't human. It's a different kind of unbearable story. It's a story of our own ancestors not respecting the humanity of other people, of people that we now know to be so full of life and love and gifts, and they're our friends, and we picture our own ancestors doing the kinds of things to these people that Mark and the other travelers from All Souls Church witnessed. How do we hold and heal that kind of memory? I think the first challenge for those of us who are white really is talking about it. I don't know about you, but I find it very hard to get most white people to talk about being white in a way that means very much. We are so trained to believe that we don't have race, other people have it. We're just somehow neutral, as if we don't walk around in bodies that hold particularity as other people do. How many times have you heard white people say, oh yeah, I'm from no culture at all? So part of the challenge for me as a white person has been to recover some of the shared memories of my family. For instance, I always knew that one side of my family, the North Carolina side, were slave owners. There they were in Burgaw, North Carolina. I don't have to look far to know about that. But the other side of my family, the one that I took pride in, the pioneers, I learned about through this story. I was given 4 sherbet glasses that these pioneers carried with them from Virginia to Missouri. And always as a child, I pictured kind of like, because this is the image that I've been given culturally, something like Little House on the Prairie. You know, a little pioneer family with ma and pa and some kids, and, you know, maybe with a couple other little pioneer families on their wagons heading bravely across that terrain. And I always pictured the woman fiercely guarding these sherbet glasses, saying, you know, we're leaving Virginia, but I want to have something really beautiful when we get to Missouri. Those are stories that I told myself. No one told me those. They just showed me those sherbet glasses, and I kind of filled in the rest. Never did it occur to me until years later, reading a book of family history, that in fact the reason that my Virginia relatives chose Missouri to move to is precisely because they could take along some of what they considered their key property. They could take their slaves with them. They deliberately chose to move to a slave state. And all of a sudden, when I think about those sherbet glasses and who protected them and how they felt doing so, I have to entertain, again, with no knowledge but only imagination, I have to entertain other possibilities of how it felt for them. Suddenly I imagine a slave, perhaps a child, perhaps an adult, who is tasked with making sure that everything on one of those carts is okay. Suddenly, I don't picture the community that's all together, equally suffering, all of them struggling through the wilderness. Suddenly, I have to imagine my own ancestors in a relationship of domination over some of the other travelers with them. Suddenly, I have to at least entertain the possibility that the emotion that surrounded the transport of those sherbet glasses from Virginia to Missouri wasn't, oh, I want to protect what's beautiful. It was, oh, I need to protect something that's somebody else's, or I could get in serious trouble. I don't know. I don't know what it was like when I read the family history that finally informed me of why my ancestors went from Virginia to Missouri. The slaves are portrayed as wildly happy to be there, as if they just adore being there and doing all that work. Nothing is ever mentioned about them wishing they were somewhere else. And indeed, the stories of the Civil War portray it from out there in Missouri as if those slaves really are rooting for the South and really are right there as part of the family. And it breaks my heart because suddenly I have to see my ancestors as people who didn't know how to communicate with people right there living with them in isolated Missouri. When we try to reconstruct memory, when we're looking at ancestral memory, there are so many emotions that come. For those of us who are white, some of those emotions are truly not helpful, and especially I would name shame as unhelpful. For me to feel guilty about what my ancestors did is appropriate. What they did was wrong. They owned other people. What they did deserves my attention and my atoning in this life, doing what I can do to heal the vestiges of slavery that are still alive. But for me to go into shame about what they did, to believe that because they did that, they were no good and I'm no good and I'm just going to throw them out and really just feel terrible about myself being white, is helpful to no one. Shame produces no meaningful activity. All that it does is take us down a spiral where we're basically just stuck. So I don't tell this story because I wish to engage in my own shame or public humiliation about this. I say it because all of us need to recover memories that are almost as painful as those that the pilgrims from All Souls Church uncovered when they went to those former hideous prisons. Don't hear me wrong. I don't mean to say that slave owners suffered as much as slaves. Not at all. I would never say that. What I do mean to say is that my legacy as a white person is one of broken communication, is one of hiding from the truth, is one of denying who and what my family was, and that there is also healing necessary to bring there. So as I go about my remembering about my own family, that is my work, to claim who I am, to understand the privilege that I carry, and to make sure that I am listening to the voices of other people who are near me and respecting them as equal to my own. It's not easy work. Remembering is not always easy. Sometimes we remember what we really would prefer to forget. And yet there's no healing without going through it. Denial doesn't get us there. I am so glad to be part of this community where all of us can heal together.